Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anna, and I am with H-Tag, and today we have Laura from Traffic Free. Laura, congratulations on winning the Top 25 Abolitionist Award. We are excited to have you here and to hear more about what Traffic Free does and your involvement in the fight to combat human trafficking. So let's begin. My first question is, tell me more about Traffic Free, what you guys do, what you do within Traffic Free, that kind of thing.
Well, I'm the executive director at Traffic Free, and Traffic Free as an organization started at the end of 2008. And it started as a ministry out of a fairly large church in Chicago. And it was really just a bunch of regular people who found out about human trafficking at the end of 2008 and said, oh my gosh, we should do something about it, which is usually, a lot of how a lot of these movements start. And so over the course of the entirety of 2009, people started coming around and saying, okay, well, let's do something about it. Let's, if we just learned about it, then that means there's other people who don't know about human trafficking as well. So started out by doing a movie screening of call and response at the end of 2008. And from there, more people were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Let's do something about it. So in 2009, the group of people who were actually part of it, and I actually was not a part of this at that point, decided to do a week-long, 7-day thing of what they called Praxis Week, which is really just a call to action for everyday people to do something every single day for 7 days, which included going out on the street and doing public outreach, holding up large signs with statistics, and then doing an awareness concert at the end of the week to raise funds. At that time, we raised funds for Not for Sale. So that kind of wrapped up, and over the course of that, it was a lot of people who knew design work, website work. And so from the get-go, we had people who were involved in the business industry and marketing and event planning who built an amazing website, who built the logo that is now recognizable. And so over the course of the last several years, we've been connecting with a lot of organizations in Chicago saying, what is it that we can do? What is it that's missing? And so over and over again, as it kind of happened accidentally, as we were connecting with them, we invited people to connect with those people along the same line. So we would host events and host different organizations to come in as speakers. And so we really just wanted to learn more. So what we were just kind of doing just to learn more and inviting people to learn more with us at restaurants, at bars, at churches, it turned into what became signature of ours. So over the course of inviting people to host different to come and speak at different events that we hosted, we decided that, okay, somehow this is something that we're good at. People are actually coming to these things. And so we realized that educational awareness was something we were actually becoming good at. And so in 2010 is when I took over with a friend of mine, and we decided to go ahead and make Traffic Free a nonprofit. So we took it out of the church. We are still a faith-based organization, but we took it out of the church as a ministry and made us a nonprofit with a current goal of education and awareness. But we're actually doing a lot of needs assessment right now to figure out what that 24/7 social services might look like for the population in Chicago. And that's another thing, is that we focus in the Chicagoland area very specifically. Over the course of all of our research, we realized that Chicago was a national hub, obviously, for human trafficking. And to this day, there's a few things about us that hasn't changed. We are faith-based. We're 100% volunteer. So even I, as an executive director, do not get paid. And we host, at this point, signature events that are large scale. We actually have an event coming up Thursday night, which is kind of an annual event. It's our expert panel event. And then we have a 5K that we have coming up. And this year will be our third one. So over the course of hosting smaller events, we've fine-tuned the things that we're actually really, really good at and have focused on a handful of events throughout the year.
Perfect. And are there additional events to the ones that you just mentioned that you guys are going to be doing this year that viewers in the Chicago area could get plugged into?
Not for the rest of the year. The Thursday night event is pretty big. It's our expert panel event, and every single year we highlight a different issue related to human trafficking. And that's going to be this Thursday night at Overflow Coffee Bar. And that starts at 6:30 p.m. And then 5K is September 7th. We actually, we got into the signature events that we do. We're actually really heavy in the January through spring, and then we have our 5K in the summer, and then we kind of just taper off in the winter to kind of regroup, figure out what the next steps are. And like I said, we're actually working on a needs assessment to figure out what 24/7 social services might look like. So I imagine that our entire team will actually be really busy putting into place what capital campaign we might need, the resources that we might need, and a lot of what I do is trying to formalize a lot of the internal and external processes that we have and continue to meet with collaborators all across the city. So it's funny to think about, there's several of us who actually do this full time now, once again, not paid. But outside of these 5 events, it's amazing how busy we still keep ourselves.
I'm sure. And I'm curious to know how you got involved in the issue of human trafficking. What motivated you to become involved?
Certainly. My story, well, I am, from a very personal standpoint, I'm 100% Chinese. And so growing up in a very traditional family where expectations were very stereotypical, to be honest, of, excelling in school, coming out of school and then excelling with, the job and the amount of money, and all these expectations were always put on me. And so I felt always a sense of, I don't even know what to call it at this point, but kind of like a sense of like strain to always be the best. And that was the only thing that was important. And my own self-worth and self-esteem were actually not that important. And so couple that, which I didn't actually realize how it affected me until I started doing a lot of short-term mission trips. And then I started doing trips of my own, namely to Mexico. And then on happenstance, I went to Armenia for a few days, saw the environment there, was in Beijing for a week, and that really culminated into a trip that I took to the Congo in 2008. And for some reason, I had a huge heart for the Congo. For years, God laid it on my heart. Several years prior to 2008, just did a lot of research about it and kept wanting to go and kept wanting to go. And that's one of those countries that you can't really get in unless you have an invitation to get in. So in 2008, over a course of very, very short months, I met somebody who then introduced me to somebody else, who then introduced me to somebody else. I quit my job, went to the Congo, and only lived there for a month. But in that month, I was, knee deep in a country that was rife with militia action. And I was actually in the eastern part of the Congo, which is what borders Rwanda, and was talking to girls, who may not recognize that their own country is labeled as the rape capital of the world, but I heard their stories firsthand. And I think that was just one of those phrases of the straw that broke the camel's back. At that point, I had been growing a heart for young girls and their self-worth and their self-esteem, going to a lot of children's homes and seeing a lot of brokenness in a lot of impoverished areas, and going to the Congo just kind of topped it all. And knew that I wanted to get involved with the lives of young women. And from that point, I was doing a lot of community mobilization work in Chicago. So I was doing a lot of connecting with other nonprofits, both faith-based and non-faith-based, and getting to know a lot of issues in Chicago, and also bringing thousands of volunteers over the course of, single-day, large-scale events. And so doing all of that, I got to know so many different issues. And as I was honing what my actual passion was, that's when my friends started Traffic Free, and I started getting brought into conversations of what does it look like, and got brought into conversations of strategic planning. And that's when, in 2010, when the girl who was running it as a ministry left and moved to DC, I took over with a friend of mine, and that's when it's like, now it's Traffic Free.
Awesome. That's an amazing story to hear, and definitely very inspirational. So thank you for sharing that aspect. How does Traffic Free impact the victims of human trafficking, as well as an everyday American? I know that you touched a little bit about doing a lot of educational components with the Chicago area, but expand on that a little more. How, are there any additional action steps that you guys take to educate Americans, and how do you affect victims of human trafficking, if applicable?
Yeah, certainly. We, at this point, because we're an education and awareness organization, we don't work directly with victims nor survivors. I personally am friends with survivors and victims, but as an organization, we don't have the capacity to right now. So at every single event that we have, we always have an action step. The next step, always bringing into, of course, yourself of what's your own attitude towards prostitution and the word pimp, and of course those simple things. And then we take it to the next level of how do you look at culture and how do you react to culture when, you see a show like Pimp My Ride? And then one of the things that we continue to do, like I said, with our expert panel event, as we've grown and learned from experts, we've invited our audience to continue to grow with us. And so last year, our expert panel focused on issues related to human trafficking, like runaways and homeless individuals and marginalized communities like LGBT. And so this year, coupling along the lines of our needs assessment, we have decided to focus this year's panel event on housing specifically. So as much as we don't work directly with victims and survivors, we know the statistics out there. We know that there's, 300,000 minors who are at risk for commercial sexual exploitation every single year in this country. And in this country, there's less than 600 beds for that specific population. And so knowing those statistics, we were actually moving forward with a needs assessment to figure out what emergency housing might look like in the city of Chicago. So as we were learning, we decided, you know what, why don't we just, invite some of the experts onto the panel with us that we've been talking to and have our audience learn directly from them as well, so that partially it's kind of strategic, to be honest, to let our audience know this is kind of what we're heading and these are the things that we're learning. So why don't you guys learn with us? And then it also obviously allows us to continue relationships that we have across the city with both government organizations as well as, organizations that do work directly with victims and survivors. One of the things that we did do last year, we actually consider the Dreamcatcher Foundation a huge partner of ours. They are a Chicago-based organization, and they are survivor-founded, run, and led. And so they're a lot about mentorship for both for girls who, before they enter into, obviously the sex trade, being at risk already, and they're also mentors for people, for women who have gotten out of the sex trade. So last year, Brenda, who runs the Dreamcatcher Foundation, and I always tell people all the time that some of these people are still celebrities to me. I've gotten to know them. I've gotten to know several of these people over the course of the last 3-4 years, and some of these women are dear friends of mine now. But every once in a while, I still get a phone call. I'm just kind of like, oh my gosh, Brenda just called me. So Brenda called me early last year, and was like, Laura, and she's just like a very powerful woman. She's like, I love what you guys are doing at Traffic Free. Can you help me grow Dreamcatchers? And I was like, what? I was like, what? I'm sorry, Traffic Free can help you? Okay. So last year we decided that we would do an event that actually just focused on them. And so us being able to leave the fall and winter open, we've actually been able to partner with a lot of other organizations during that time to help them build capacity or doing a co-hosting event or something along those lines. So we basically hosted an event for the Dreamcatcher Foundation, brought our audience in. Somehow God has blessed us to be able to bring an audience to our events. So we brought our audience in, highlighted the Dreamcatcher Foundation, and asked our audience to bring like a donation of goods. And so it was just incredible for us to be able to say, yeah, Traffic Free has gotten to a point where, we get to partner with such a tangible survivor-run and survivor-led organization and allowed our audience to come alongside with them. So as much as just like how we became an event-based awareness organization by accident, we kind of have become this like connector also between the public as well as, organizations that are maybe a little bit less known. And so so that's one way that, very tangibly recently that we have done that.
That's awesome. And going back to what you said earlier about Traffic Free looking into needs-based assessments and all of that, would working with victims potentially be something that you take on, or outsource to other organizations that you would partner with?
It would probably be a combination of both. Having done this before, I've never started a nonprofit before. I've already made mistakes. I'm sure we'll make mistakes by the time we open up whatever social services might look like. We don't know if it's going to look like drop-in services at this point. We don't know whether or not it's going to look like housing. We're going to do whatever it is that, honestly, that funding will allow for. Obviously, funding in anything is a huge issue. And then we'll focus on whatever the statistics are actually justifying. The sad thing is, as I'm sure with you knowing, having been working in the human trafficking field, statistics are extremely hard to come by. So anecdotally, we know that housing is a huge issue. No matter what social justice issue you look at, housing is always going to be a number one issue across the board. And so we know this. We tell these stories. We tell these grand statistics that, to be honest, at the end of the day, may not be justified by the Chicago Police Department or, the county sheriff's office. And so we're actually having a really hard time trying to figure this out, because what we know by the stories and the numbers that are out there aren't actually justified by arrest records or, Illinois has a law in place now where minors cannot be labeled as juvenile prostitutes if they're under the age of 18. So we'll never know now, based on records, whether or not a minor was actually taken off the streets or rescued because they may have been suspected as being sold. And so, since that terminology has been taken out, it actually decreases our likelihood of finding those statistics to justify what we know is needed. But over the course of all of that, we continue to partner with organizations to help get them to help us, basically. And it's very mutual collaboration in Chicago, which is what I love about working here. It's always a free, open exchange of ideas, and everybody who finds anything always posts it on their website. So there's nothing that's just held as an organization. And so as we continue to work with other organizations and the government bodies around here, everybody has been like, okay, Traffic Free, you guys can go ahead and do this. And then, God willing, whether or not we open drop-in services or emergency housing or both somewhere down the road, the Dreamcatcher Foundation, which I already mentioned, they will actually serve as hand-in-hand partners in helping us develop the programming. So if we look to emergency housing, we're going to look to serve basically people who are, currently victims. That means they're being taken out at 2 a.m. A Chicago police officer might call us and be like, hey, we think we have this person who might be, commercially sexually exploited. Can't you stay here? Yes, we have the bed. Great, go. So at that point, nothing's verified. There hasn't been an assessment done. Or if it's drop-in services, obviously we'll probably widen the net, because a drop-in services means anybody can just stop by and get services. So that's the long answer. The short answer is I don't know, and we're figuring it out.
It'll be exciting to see what you guys come up with based off of what you guys find in your research. So we'd love to keep us updated on that, as we'd love to hear that. Your organization has obviously been very successful in what it's done so far. What would you say is Traffic Free's single most successful thing that you guys have done, and what would you attribute the success to?
The single most successful thing, gosh. I would say it's the relationships we've been able to build. The doors that have been opened for us to have conversations is amazing. Like I said, some of these people, some of these heads of organizations are still celebrities to me, and the fact that I have somebody now at the Cook County State's Attorney's Office that I can text. The other day, last week was her birthday, and I was like, happy birthday, and I get a text back saying, thank you, friends, and so that's just been amazing to be able to say, Traffic Free has, in the most humble way possible, I say this, Traffic Free has arrived, in the Chicago scene, and we did it as 100% volunteer organization. Obviously, God willing, once we open up services, certainly we'll need staffing. But, God willing, we'll have the funding soon to actually be able to pay people. And, it's very obvious to us as a faith-based organization what we attribute it to. It's God. We do, what we always say is that we are a Christ-centered but not Christ-forced organization. And I think that's actually helped us gain both respect as well as a curiosity from organizations of, what do you mean? And so, there's a lot of faith-based organizations that have a lot of respect, like International Justice Mission. Doesn't matter who you are, International Justice Mission has a lot of respect across the board. And then there's some other organizations that are faith-based that don't have a lot of respect, because a lot of government agencies or, non-faith-based organizations might, see them as being Christ-forced. So that's a fine line that we don't very consciously walk. We just know that we're motivated by Christ. And so it's that motivation that brings us together as a leadership team and as a board of directors together. But as far as the public knows, we're just living out, what we believe we were called to do.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you for that answer. What would you say have you found the most challenging in combating human trafficking, whether individually or as an organization?
I think it's kind of both. Like I said, I've already made mistakes running a nonprofit. There's certain paperwork I didn't know I needed to file. And it's certainly, especially with this needs assessment, um, just getting those hard facts and figuring out the paperwork trail of everything. I think it's the paperwork at the end of the day, whether we're looking at direct services or whether we're looking to build the nonprofit piece, the paperwork has always been the hardest. Like there's something that I just discovered a month ago that I should have filed apparently 2 years ago. Whoops. So I'm about to pay some late fees on that, which is what it is. And so it's funny because I was actually talking to a dear friend of mine who runs a partner organization, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. I didn't know about this. And it was really relieving to me for her to tell me, oh, don't worry, I didn't know about that either. And then the reason she found out she needed to file some certain paperwork was because she had somebody at her who joined her board whose sister was in the organization of, the government organization that she didn't file paperwork work with. I'm like, why is there not a starting a nonprofit for dummies book?
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny because I think I'm such a relational person. That might be part of the reason for my answer, where the relationships have come and they're fun, they're easy. You get to sit down and, get to know someone. The paperwork part, I think, hands down, is probably like the hardest thing.
I'm sure that it's that way for most people. So just trying to figure out deadlines and what's the right paper to fill out. So I'm sure
Yeah.
most people, find that
Yeah.
tedious. So you're probably not alone in that.
Yeah.
Last question before we wrap up. What are some ways that we at HTAG, as well as the general public, can do to combat human trafficking, especially within our specific communities?
I think it's years in the making, but I think doing exactly what we did is, for anybody out there, you find out something is horrendous is happening in the world and you want to do something about it. So that's exactly what we've been doing for the last several years, is figuring out that, oh my gosh, this is happening, and really sitting down and being a learner. I think that's another part of the respect that Traffic Free has been able to get, is that, a lot of people will come up to us and say, oh my gosh, I want to go break down doors. No, that's not the answer. Or to be honest, a lot of people know about this issue of housing and they want to go immediately and open up housing without doing the research and without making sure that the partner organizations around you in that area have actually been able to weigh in. And I think that's a huge part, not because an organization needs to have their say so, but because there's so many organizations who've already done so much, who've already been through so much red tape, who've been through that paperwork, like I said, which is a huge part of it, that if you don't engage them and take the time to sit down and learn, which, there's obviously a part of me that's, that it gets a little heartbroken when I think about the amount of time that Traffic Free has been around. And we are still so far away from providing social services when we know that, men, women, and girls and boys are being victimized day to day. And, some of these people are being, raped 10 times a day, if not more. And so that breaks my heart. But at the same time, if you want to do something that's actually helpful, you can't just go in and just do it. You can't just open up a house. Um, so I would say, if you really want to do, if this is an issue that you feel like is really weighing in your heart, take the time to learn and do all the research that you can and figure out what it is that your own talents can do for the movement. So at Traffic Free, we've got marketing people, communications people, event planning, operations management. Everybody, all the people across the gamut are now part of Traffic Free and are either on our board of directors or on our actual leadership team. And so, I mean, yes, we now have attorneys and we now have MSWs on the team, but it took us a long time to get to this point. So that's actually more of a complicated answer than I usually give people. I mean, that always goes back to the idea of, like, figuring out, watching your own speech and how you react, like I said, to the word prostitute or the word pimp, or, how you react to culture and not standing for certain things when something is said, and being okay with being the person in the room at a party who's like, you know what, that's actually not cool. When somebody says something that's, off color. But on a grander scale, if you really want to do something on a grander scale about it, then take the time to learn.
Are there any resources that you would recommend that we as viewers can get plugged into to further our knowledge on the issue?
Certainly. I mean, everything is available on the World Wide Web these days. So as far as national organizations, International Justice Mission, the Polaris Project, and Shared Hope International are three amazing national and international organizations that post a lot of their research and a lot of ways to get involved right on their website. Locally in Chicago, which a lot of the Chicago research is also applicable across the country. The Chicago Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation, which their acronym is CASE with two A's, they have done a lot of research. Unfortunately, they have not done the needs assessment we're doing, or else I could have just stolen it from them. But they've done a lot of research. They actually just released a research about the Johns boards, which is the USA Sex Guide. And so a researcher took the last 2 years just perusing through all the posts by men, and it is the USA Sex Guide is actually specifically for heterosexual males to post. I don't even know how to describe it, but to post how to, what to, how much, cops to look for certain areas. If there's a heterosexual male traveling to another city, he can go on the USA Sex Guide and say, I'm looking for, an 18-year-old Asian tonight, and somebody will respond to that post. So that's what the USSX Guide is. And CASE just released that report over the last 2 years of analyzing all these posts. So they're amazing. And then a lot of the other organizations that we work with here locally, the International Organization for Adolescents, IOFA, is part of the Cook County Human Trafficking Task Force. They have a lot of amazing stuff on their website. And of course, Traffic Free has a lot of stuff on our website, as well as our Facebook page as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your time and sharing all the amazing things that Traffic Free is doing. For you viewers, if you would like more information about Traffic Free, please visit their website at www.trafficfree.org, or you can always visit www.htag.org if you would like to get a link to their website. Once again, congratulations on winning the Top 25 award. My name is Anna, and I'm an abolitionist.